How about that?
Hey.
Hey.
Hi. I feel an eggplant emoji.
Yeah, eggplant emoji.
Am I only supposed to fist?
You fist and I
Okay.
eggplant, and then we
Awesome.
can switchy if we want.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I like. Anyway,
Well,
let's get started.
Yeah, people often are like the clench fist. What is a clench fist?
Well,
And
we were standing back there like clenched. That's an interesting choice because I would have said power.
Yeah.
I always call it the black power fist, but I was like clenched makes it more.
Yeah.
It just changes it.
Yeah, and that's my tattoo. So I have a
Oh, wow.
fist. And people
That's
usually,
a commitment to pleasure. That's
they're
powerful.
Very committed. But depending on the context, people will, spark all types of conversation.
I'm sure. I bet you've had a lot. Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of ask you and begin this conversation a little bit with thinking about how you interpret the words unapologetic and pleasure for yourself.
Yeah, what do you think?
For myself, I remember when I first started to, well, first, thank you to the Chicago Humanities Festival. This has been on my list for a while. You know how you have like your vision board or your wish list of places? And this happens every single year in the city that I grew up in, and this is my first time being invited. So, thank you so much.
It's like that Coachella moment.
You know what I'm saying? Finally. What did Beyonce say? That's right. Ain't that some shit? Ain't that about a bitch? That's what she said. Yes. Ain't that about a bitch? Is this being recorded? It is.
It is. Yeah. No one will ever see it now, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
She might. That would be great. And thank you to Adrienne. Adrienne is like my friend in real life. And so this is really amazing to be here with her. And she saved my life I don't know how many times. So thank you. And Emmanuel, thank you, for always I feel like the love and support from afar, and it feels good to have it in person. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm a fan.
Oh, thank you. So when I started to write Unapologetic, I guess now 5 years ago, I actually had a whole chapter about play. It didn't make it into the book though. Maybe the next one. It was a whole chapter about play, and I think the reason why I did it is because I am still sitting with myself, trying to figure out what pleasure means for me, and what play means for me, and what joy means for me. Because it's one thing to be unapologetic in the political space, and in community organizing, in my blackness, in my feminism, and for me it's another thing to connect it to joy and pleasure. And it's like an uphill battle in many ways that's connected to things from my childhood, from my adulthood. I mean, we talk about the word trauma a lot, or I hear the word trauma a lot. And that's something that's really real for me, between this idea of being unapologetic about the kind of world that I want to live in, while also being unapologetic about my right and my literal birthright to pleasure. And knowing what our ancestors, and I don't think our ancestors were devoid of pleasure.
Not at all.
Not at all.
No. I've been thinking a lot about Harriet's orgasms lately.
Right, because honey, because when Harriet Tubman dropped that fuck boy out of her life,
she's like, oh, you couldn't wait for 3 months for me to come back and bring you your freedom?
Exactly. When she dropped him out of her life, Harriet Tubman had to experience pleasure,
So
yeah.
I will
What
say
you
this,
think?
we were at the Black Love Convergence recently, which was organized by Ed Brown, and I want to shout it out that all Black people should make their way to it. But we did a spell casting, and we cast a spell harnessing the power of Harriet Tubman's first orgasm after her last Underground Railroad conducting journey. Because I'm like, that level of satisfaction is what I want for Black people. When I think of pleasure, that's a standard that I want to hold. It's like a professional satisfaction, the pleasure of actually having done the task, done the thing that you were meant to do, and then also the embodiment of pleasure, that it's and also I'm in a living, miraculous body that is wired for pleasure. And it's joy, it's satisfaction, it's contentment, the way that I've been working with that phrase. And it's funny because when I say pleasure to people, they're all like, ooh, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, that might be part of it if that's that brings you the most pleasure, but there's an interview with Alana Devich Cyril in there, who is a beloved friend who passed away from cancer last year, and talking about the pleasures that she pursued and was able to access while she had cancer. And it was like listening to my favorite songs every day, eating ice cream every day, looking at the face of my beloved every day, like surrendering to friendship. You know, like pleasure can mean all those things, but really it's an internal like, yes. Mm-hmm. And then unapologetic to me is like throwing off the weight of oppression, I think, right? It's like oppression is the thing that makes us want to apologize for our humanity. It says something's wrong with you because you are not whatever we have decided is supreme. And so then you spend your time all the time like, I'm so sorry that I'm Black and taking up space, or I'm a woman and I need to have my period. I'm so sorry. And it's like, no, fuck, I bleed, and that's where life comes from. That's unapologetic, right? I'm like, you're lucky that I bleed. You should be worshiping and gathering this blood and like putting it on all your plants or something. Like it's that good, right? So I'm always trying to cultivate that, especially in younger people, that I'm like, you came into this world perfect. There is nothing to apologize for. Anyone who told you separate, different from that, was fucking with your system, and we're gonna unfuck you.
Yeah. And you need those things, right? You need pleasure, you need joy to do the work for a long time. That it's more sustainable if you're finding that for yourself early on, so that you can continue to do, work in communities and help other people. If you're not focused on that for yourself first, like how are you gonna provide any type of vision that is happiness, joy, pleasure for someone else?
Well, and also I think not keeping it too separate too, right? That I feel like for a few decades of my life, I did the pendulum swing of like, I'm gonna work hard and it's gonna be miserable. And then I'm gonna go have my pleasure. And then I'm gonna work hard again. And so part of what I'm trying to, and I don't know if it's possible really, but I'm trying to do it in more and more spaces, is like, we're in this meeting, can we like break out into some 90s R&B and celebrate the fact that we made a decision and like enjoy each other? Can we have great food? Like, what are the pleasures we can bring into the work? Yeah, so we're not, like I wanna get out of the cycle of burning out and recovering, where recovering is the only place I experience pleasure. Anybody here had a burnout?
Right?
Okay, let's stop doing that. We actually don't have enough people to just be burning out all the time, so I think we can stagger in more pleasing ways.
I'm happy that you named it as a cycle. I think the entirety of 2018, I was moving through burnout. I was still working. I still had to show up. I still had to do all the things.
Be brilliant. I mean, just what we expect from you is brilliance.
Right? Yeah.
That's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh shit, I was just smart that one time. I'd like a break,
Right? A break. From the intellectual work to the relationship work, like being a woman, for me, in my experience, being a woman in leadership, there's specifically a Black woman, there's like a mammification that can happen, or auntification, and
talk about it.
It's wild. And so moving through all of that while also being expected to, either directly or indirectly, to show up for people in a particular way, absolutely, burnout was real. And at the same time, I don't believe that we have to have like perfect people who are completely like 100% at the top of their wellness game in our movements. That's just unrealistic.
No, even Beyonce said she would never push herself like that again.
Right?
Everybody has
no sugar, no
that diet. I was like, girl.
Right?
Although I do want to point out, just because my Virgo nature, that she said no sugar, no carbs, but then she was eating an apple in that shot, and I was like, sugar. I'm just curious. I was like, I'm glad you ate the apple. I want you to eat as many apples as you can, girl, because you need to live. And I like her a little thicker anyway, but that's just personal preference.
I also wasn't sure if she really did mean that she was never going to push herself. I needed to dissect that a little bit more. What does that all mean?
I mean, like, let's get into Beyonce, right? Like, that's what we're here for.
Why not?
I mean, like, this is my favorite content. So I feel like it was interesting because I had a thread and I've seen a couple of things of people being like, she went too skinny, she pushed herself too hard, and like she's starving herself and all this. And it's interesting to me because I'm like, yes, and I understand how normally we would be like, oh, you're an artist, like we don't want to see you do that. But then I'm also like, she's also an Olympic level athlete in a game that doesn't get an award. Like, it's like the only award she gets is like slaying the shit out of all of us. But like, you wouldn't say that to Serena, like, oh, you're only eating vegetables, that's fucked up. You'd be like, yeah, because you're about to do something with your body that I can't even imagine doing with mine. And I feel like that for Beyonce, like I feel protective of like, well, if that's what she felt like she needed to do to get on that stage for 2 hours to dance nonstop while also singing at the full voice that she gives us, while also being hot as fuck, while also directing everything and knowing every place the camera need to go.
All those things.
Plus, you know, if she needed to eat some lettuce for a little while to get her mind wrapped around that, I'm okay with it. But I'm like, and I heard the part of her that was like, I had to be away from my babies. That's the part that I'm like, I don't want her to ever push herself in a way that means she has to remove or give less of herself to her family than she wants to, for us to still respect or honor her work.
Yeah, can someone tweet at her that, please?
B.
So we were talking, one of the words that came up was joy, right? And celebration, and how do we take the time to actually celebrate our struggle and our wins in that struggle? What are we celebrating right now? What are you celebrating right now?
What am I celebrating right now?
Tell me.
I mean, first of all, many of the movement spaces that I'm in have a shape of not celebrating. Have a shape of not celebrating big wins, small wins, medium wins, when somebody is actually successful. Like this.
Especially if it's not them.
Especially if it's not them.
Like, oh, I have a critique. I'm like, bitch, you didn't do it.
You were on MSNBC for 5 minutes. You were on MSNBC for 5 minutes and I wasn't, so I have a problem with that. And I'm going to tear you down for the next several months. I wish I was just saying that like as a joke, but like that's real.
No, you're like, I got that phone call. But let's kick that person out.
But what am I celebrating?
The joy.
Yeah. What I'm celebrating Black women and all the time. Y'all can clap for Black women.
Yes.
I'm celebrating Black women all the time. This past week, I was at the Highlander Center.
Yes.
And for folks who may or may not know, the Highlander Center's office was burned down by, I don't know how many, but some white supremacists. And just the office building. It's a whole campus, 200 acres of land with several buildings, but the office building was burned down. Yeah. And this was last month. Yeah. It was last month. And so we were there this past week, and there were a group of us, a decent amount of us, who are holding big parts of movement across this country, from people who lead organizations for formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated women, people who lead organizations fighting against HIV and AIDS, Black trans women-led organizations, all kinds of Black women in this room. And every single morning we were singing. Yes. Every single night we were talking shit with each other. Yes. We had a whole community care night, all these things, because we know that we live in a world that is like set up for us to fail. Yes. And the way that we're gonna like actually do this thing, transform the world, is we have to celebrate each other. So I'm like a Dionne Haywood fangirl.
Me too.
I love Dionne. Like I will like, I'm a cheerleader. So I try to be a cheerleader.
I wear that Pussies for Liberation shirt all the time, just like
as much as possible.
Dionne Haywood is on me.
As much as possible. And so that's the biggest thing that I'm celebrating. I'm also celebrating the young people and the people here in Chicago all the time for the work that our folks are doing. Holding it down, fighting against these whack-ass politicians, these so-called progressives, the No Cop Academy campaign. I'm celebrating that. I'm celebrating that struggle, and I'm also just celebrating folks who people who take time off and come back, and just all those things. And I guess lastly, just celebrating my lineage, the people that I come from. Be it my mama, my grandmama, my grandmama's grandmama, the 10,000 grandmothers at my back, and knowing that I'm not at this thing alone, and I'm not the first to do it. What you celebrating? In addition to Beyonce.
I'm celebrating like getting to be on the stage with you right now. I'm such a huge fan of your work, and I really deeply, deeply respect the way you think and the rigor with which you approach the work. I don't think anyone will know until like down the line the kind of person that you know how I feel like Ella Baker, like people weren't all in her face the whole time, like, bitch, you fly, you know what I'm saying? But they should have been, and I just want to like be like that in your face, because I feel like that. So I'm celebrating you, and I'm really excited about you. I'm also celebrating, I have several people in my life who are escaping patriarchy right now, and I'm really celebrating that because it's not easy, it's really hard. And a lot of them are women who've been married to men. Some of them are men who are realizing what they've been involved in. But I'm like, the way that Me Too and all of this stuff is playing out on an intimate level is worth our celebration and worth our attention. I am celebrating a lot of babies in my life who are just super fly, and I feel like babies are being born with a different capacity right now. Again, that I'm like, I don't know if we'll understand it for a while, but I keep meeting these little children who are like, I have a critique. You know, I understand what's going on here, and like, here's how I feel about it. And I'm just like, yeah, what should we do, you know? I'm celebrating also, I just got to do a podcast, this duo, Ergo. I love them.
Yes, Damon is up in here somewhere, I think.
Are they here? I don't know, but they said they would come, but I don't even care if they stood us up because they did. And the podcast was an ecstatic conversation. Like, it really felt like so beautiful. But one of the things I was saying in there was like, I'm also celebrating my own, the arc of healing that I have been in, to where right now I'm really feeling like content and abundantly happy. And it's not because of anyone else. You know what I mean? Like, it's not because someone else has decided that I'm lovable or whatever. Like, there's a lot of people who are like feeling love towards me, but it's much more like, oh snap! Like, I have agency in my life, and I'm doing my healing work, and I can have this joy. Yeah, that's good.
No, yeah, and I feel like that's something that I get through your book, right? Pleasure Activism, and that's also something that I got through your book, Unapologetic. And I think about how people are really interested in this work, as you encounter at universities and talks and bookstore signings and things like that, where you're seeing a multiplicity of people who are really interested in this work, organizing, sustainability in organizing. And I wonder, how do you think about, or what do you think about, like, what has been your experience with people who maybe were not necessarily at the forefront of your mind in writing this, and the white people? Yes.
You can just say it, Emmanuel.
Also, I mean,
we can talk about the whites.
I feel like there are many parts of it that I relate to, right? Like, as a queer person, as a person of color. But it's very clear to me when I read it, I'm like, this is for Black femme women. Like, it's a gift. Yeah. So how do you respond to that? Like, when people are engaging in the work, like.
I mean, I'm thrilled. So I'll say this: Octavia Butler is like my prophet, goddess, saint, and I really do like try to honor her all the time. But she's a good teacher for this, because the way she wrote her text was she would have these Black women protagonists, usually young Black women protagonists, who were going through all these adventures and crises and, you know, iterations and evolutions, right? And she wrote the text very clearly in a way that, like, as a young Black woman picking it up, I was like, I see myself. I know that I'm in this story. But then she didn't limit it in any way she was like, a young Black woman's story is a human story, and so the wisdom that she is acquiring is wisdom that every human being needs. And I feel similarly with any of the texts that I write, that I'm like, to me, it's the Combahee River Collective's wisdom. It's like, if it's good for Black women, given the structure of the society, if it's good for Black women, it's gonna be good for all of us, right? And I'm like, I see that actually happen in my life, that when people of color who are non-Black, or when white people, and particularly white women, I'm like, I love when a white woman realizes, like, oh, Black women, that's what Oprah's been on this shit forever. Oprah's just like, listen, white ladies, y'all need me, you need me, right? And I feel that way. Like, I sit in these rooms and I'm just like, y'all need us, and you didn't know you needed us. And even though we've been treated so horrifically by you for so long, we still recognize that on the greatest, grandest scale, your survival and healing is tied up in how healed we are, right? So I'm like, if you want to come and you want to read the book and talk to me about it, you want to share it with your friends and all that, I'm like, excellent. Because the more people who see a Black woman who's in her joy and her power, the more people who read about what young Black organizers are doing and how can they organize themselves behind and support that, like, all of us get free from those inner transformations that have to happen for white people to see Black people as leaders, or for other people of color to even orient themselves. I'm also really excited right now about all these non-Black people of color who are like, I want that for us, right? Like what's happening with the movement for Black Lives? What do y'all, you know, it's hard. We're doing hard work, but it's like we are lifting ourselves up out of oppression, and we're starting to look at each other with dignity, and like it's compelling, it's irresistible. That's our work, is to be irresistible. So I'm like, yeah, if people can't resist it, we're doing what we came to do.
That's right. I opened up the book with that quote from the Combahee River Collective.
I was like,
yeah, because I mean, so Sister Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs.
Praise her name.
Yes. And she says that Black feminist text is sacred text. She's the one who taught me that. And so I open up this with some sacred text from the Combahee River Collective. In the second half of the quote, they say in their statement, if Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all the systems of oppression. And I believe in that.
Just like that.
That's the word.
That's clear.
And it's the truth.
All men,
the light and the
all
way.
women, and all Black people.
Right,
Amen.
all Black. And if you talk to Barbara
hallelujah.
Smith or any of the members of the collective, their understanding today of woman is extremely expansive. Right? When they think about, they mean all Black women, Black trans women, Black folks, even they mean Black folks across the gender spectrum, gender non-conforming people, all kinds of Black folk. Yes. And it's with that understanding. I wrote this book for Black people. Hands down. I was thinking about my 8-year-old niece when I wrote this, and like when she reads it in a couple of years and she like tears it apart and says, I'm not actually that revolutionary. That's like,
I know, I'm just so ready for that though. I'm like, yes.
She gonna say, you know, if I get it right, I'm trying to politicize her now. I said, I bring her to our meetings because I'm like, yeah, at one point I'm like, you don't have any politics. We gonna have to get this together. Yes, a small child. Like, I gotta do this because my sister, you know, I'm responsible for her.
That's so good.
And so I am in shock. I was like, at the beginning, very shocked that like white women reading this book and being like, oh my God. Yes. This is dope.
This is like so liberating
like,
for me.
Right. And I was like, this is amazing because I literally say in the book. That's so funny.
Let's talk about it.
I talk about white women maybe twice in the book. I actually don't talk about white people very much, period.
Yeah.
Because I do believe, I don't know if it was Toni Morrison, she talks about how she writes for Black people.
Toni
and this woman is like accolades on accolades on accolades. Because when we're writing from our experience, when we're organizing from our experience, when we're doing any of this work from our place, our identity, and our politics are connected to our identities and like actually express a value, what we're doing is it's gonna free up everybody. Yeah. Just because I'm talking about, shout out to Elizabeth Warren. Just because I'm talking about free college tuition, or I'm talking about student loans, I'm not a surrogate. She's not paying me for this. Oh, just to be clear. Just to be clear.
Yet.
Just to be clear.
Stump for me, baby.
When we come to the table and we're talking about reparations as Black people, and we say we want free college tuition in all public schools, right? When we win that, everybody wins that. Who, you know, like everybody who's not like dumb wealthy, right? Who can actually afford it. We're winning this thing. When we win a $15 minimum wage, when we won that, that's for everybody. We don't start sorting out, you Black, you get it, you ain't Black, you don't get this thing. And you know, like these are the ways that we're coming to this and naming our people and our experiences and what we are owed. You know, from Martin Luther King talking about, I'm coming to get my check. They don't really quote that from him a lot of the times when he say we coming to get our checks. But
I quote that often.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's a part of what that's what we are owed, future generations are owed, what our ancestors are owed. And like if we get free, all of us are getting free.
I also will say on this tip that when you meet a white person, and I love, Amanda Seales did this comedy special recently, and she talks about like people who happen to be white and white people, right? And I love the distinction because she says white people are people who really believe that their whiteness makes them somehow different and better, right? But people who just happen to be white are like people who happen to be Black or people who happen to be other things. Like, I'm a human being, and then this construction has me over here. And so let me be responsible inside of that. And I really appreciate, often when I meet people who are coming, I mean, last night I did this book event, when I meet people who are coming up and they are crying, they are open-hearted, they are like, here is what I'm making of what you have offered. I'm like, I see you, person who happens to be white, who is alert to this magical, miraculous world, and to how random it is that you're white and I'm not, and anything else is going on, and who is open to learning from whoever is a teacher, which is like, when you open our books, you're not just reading our text, because we have lineage, right? So I'm like, I want you to read me so that you understand and will read Octavia and Audrey and Tony K. Bambara and all these people who inform and have shaped me. I want you to claim all of this as part of the human history and human wisdom that you would refer to in the same way that you would refer to Shakespeare or Galileo or anyone else. Is like, all of this is all of ours. We all figured it out. We all have access to it, but you've been ignoring it, and now you see it. Good. Welcome.
Yeah, and there's such a rich history. I mean, I think in both texts you can find, you annotate names, stories, struggles that you're like, I had.
Cite black women.
Yes,
I used to sit back at events and listen to people who could just like quote after quote after quote, and such said, and such said, and I'm like, I can't do that.
That's why I put it down in the book. I was like, it is in here. I will paraphrase.
Right?
I'm like,
but I think that's like core black feminist practice.
Yes.
Is to do like a litany of citations of like where we come from.
That's right.
And like, I think like people who are still alive right now.
That's right.
And when we do the work, if we're telling, I talk about this a lot in the book, and I really do believe it in my organizing. And I'm a history buff. I'm also a Chicago Public School graduate.
You're such a good history nerd.
Yes, Chicago Public School, CPS. And that's where I fell in love with history in school. I fell in love with history in high school. And from these like mostly white dude teachers that I had. And from there, I remember this one class, my 20th century history class. When we read about the Russian Revolution, we read 3 different books, 3 different sources. And then I didn't like completely think of it the same way that I think of it now, but it's this idea of like incomplete stories will lead to incomplete solutions. And if we're telling an incomplete story about struggles of black folk, struggles of humanity, struggles on the land, then we're gonna end up with incomplete solutions. Like if we can tell the stories about the transatlantic slave trade, we sure damn well can tell the stories of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and how they started the first known trans rights organization in the world. Why can't we tell Marsha P. Johnson's story? If we're gonna do Black History Month, then we need to do it right. Because if you tell an incomplete story, be it about Rosa Parks and her long like history of doing organizing against sexual assault, you tell an incomplete story about the LGBTQ movement in this country, then how are we gonna craft like full campaigns? We're gonna continue to miss stuff. We're gonna continue to try stuff or miss stuff that we could have done, but we just weren't paying attention.
I feel like one of the things that I am learning as I keep revisiting Audre Lorde's text on the uses of the erotic is she talks about how we become comfortable with settling, self-negation, and self-denial.
That's right.
And I think about that in terms of the campaigns that we run and what we settle for, right? So I keep talking about this, like Obamacare leaps to mind for me, where I'm like, when we were in the process of receiving or organizing around that, people are like, that's not nearly close to what we need. We need like that. Obamacare gets us to like here, and we need like full body coverage, you know? Right. But then when then it was like, oh, we switch over. Now we got the orange Cheeto man. And so it's like, oh, Obamacare, don't take my Obamacare. I'm like, oh, damn. Like we are settling for self-negation of our health. And settling for something that's not even close to what we actually need. And so that's the other thing for me is like, how do we set and hold a standard and recognize, you know, I'm always, I learned that from movement generation, like what is politically possible in this moment is that's what we have to be shifting all the time, because otherwise we're in false solution land. Yes. And it's like what we need is revolution, right? And anything less than revolution is not actually going to work for us to be in right relationship with this planet. That's like, I don't identify as a revolutionary because I think it's like cool. I identify because I want my nibblings, like all the children that come from all the people I love to have this magical earth to live on and to be in right relationship with each other on it. Like, to me, revolution is the only way we get there. And so I'm like, how do we make revolution politically possible? That's right. That is interesting to me.
That's right.
Yeah. And it hasn't been like one administration. Like when I think about,
it's been every administration since the foundation of this nation.
And I think about like immigration, detention, incarceration. Yes, those are things that have been amplified in this current administration, but they were definitely happening in the last administration.
Yeah, it's harder because it's like such a gross person. And that really makes a difference, right? Because I was like, Obama was so smooth.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you dropped a bomb, but You know, like there's just a way that's like, but you look funny and cool. I don't know. There's it's horrible, right? It's horrible, but I do want to talk. I mean, I don't know, but I do want to say that because I'm just like, I'm actually, can I tell that funny story about when you didn't show up to that one dinner? Okay, can I tell this funny story? I just have to tell this funny story.
Nobody really knows that, but go ahead.
I know. I'm gonna tell. That's why now people will know.
Go ahead, tell it.
Is it okay? All right.
Yep.
So one time I got invited to an Obama Foundation summit. Okay, and so I'm like, show up. You know, I can't believe I got invited to this random. I'm like, me? Y'all know who I am? Whatever. So I show up and I'm like me. So I'm wearing like a see-through top and like a big old tutu, and I'm just like, you know, whatever. I'm in the Obama summit, and then I go to they have a gala that evening, right? And they just give out these tickets to everybody, like you come to the gala. So I go in, and I go to check in with my ticket, and they're like, oh, you need to go to that table over there. You're checking in over here. I was like, okay, cool. You know, not thinking. I was connecting with this organizer who works with what is it, Harriet's.
Apothecary?
Not Harriet's Apothecary, the one that does the disability justice. Yes.
Harriet Tubman Collective.
So I was connecting with this amazing organizer, and we were like talking. I'm not paying attention. They give me my table. I walk up. I'm looking around in the back, like, where's my table? And I was like, can you tell me where this table is? 40, whatever. He was like, oh, that's that table in the front, right? So I go down to my table, and so I was like looking at the names. I get so excited because Charlene Carruthers' name is right next to mine. So I was like, boom, I'm at the right table in my life. And then I keep looking, and the other person who's sitting at our table is President Barack Obama, right? So I was like, damn, I should have worn a different top, because now Michelle is gonna look at me like, bitch, right? I was like, I didn't know, Michelle, I would have never, ever, you know. But,
and where was I?
And so then I text Charlene, because I'm like, we're getting close. I think the Obamas are gonna come soon. You know, the security, you know, you start to see something shift. So I was like, Charlene, where are you, girl? Texting like, hey, girl, hey. And Charlene's like, girl, I'm sick.
I was in New York.
You were like, I'm not able to make it, right? And you were like sick, you were working on the book, and you were out of town. So 3 things. I was like, when you first responded, you were like, oh, I'm doing this. And I was like, you need to stop that, because we're at Obama's table, and I don't know what intervention needs to happen or what needs to happen. This is Chicago. You know, are we supposed to shut it down? Like, I don't know what to do, right? Are we charming? Are we shutting it down? Like, what are we doing, right? I need guidance. And she was like, I literally am, I can't make it, I can't do it, right? And I was just like, okay. So, but then Obama sits down at the table, and it's just like this reckoning moment, right? Where I'm like, there are decisions that you have made that I am viscerally opposed to.
That's right.
That's my truth. And I need you to, you know, I want you to feel that. But I'm also like, you have taken on a role that I can't even imagine ever taking on. And you took it on with nothing, right? Basically almost no support, very little of the actual experience you probably needed for that position, and you still took it on, and you did it with a lot of grace. And I see him as like a facilitative person, right? So we sat down this conversation, and you know, it's a conversation where you don't get to have necessarily all the moments you think you're gonna have. But by the end of it, he was like, you're a love goddess. And I was like, this is true. And also I was like, that means, I was like, I didn't bring the hammer, but it's okay, right? But I also was like, oh, this is the difference between a charming leader and a fucking disgusting leader. And it's also the difference between an intelligent, like a person who's like, an intelligent leader who you're like, oh, I see you trying to use your intelligence for good. You may not always succeed in that, but I see that that's what you're up to. And I don't think that Trump is an idiot. I often tell people that because they're like, he's so dumb, he's so whatever. I'm like, no. That is a very smart man. He's just a very smart evil man, right? So he uses his intelligence for destruction, for tearing asunder, and for confusion, for obfuscating people, right?
I was sick that day. I was sick because I wasn't there, and I'll tell y'all why. I was because they invited me. Sick. And if you've ever been invited to anything that has to do anything with the White House,
yes,
I feel like I sound so ridiculous.
I mean, right, please say it, because if you've ever been invited to the White House, honey,
invited to the White House thing.
Okay, I have not.
Extra and vague.
Yes,
and they like email me.
It's sort of like a random email. Right? You're like, on this day, are you available?
It's happening. Okay. So I had no idea that I was gonna be sitting at the table with him. And so I was sick because, right, we're in the middle of a campaign for a community benefits agreement. Yes. And I'm like, bitch, you missed the opportunity to organize.
Exactly. And I was like, I was literally texting everyone I knew in Chicago, like, there must be something going on with this foundation.
And I was texting other people to tell them, this is what you need to say if you see him. This is what you da-da-da-da-da. And so that's why I was sick, because it would have been a perfect opportunity to actually talk to him about a thing and tell him no.
And he would have loved you. He would have been like, thank you, Charlene.
Because for some reason, white people and conservatives and liberals like me. I don't know why.
Why do you think?
I don't know. I don't know why. they tend to like me. I always get surprised when I get invited to talk in places because I'm like, y'all know what I'm gonna say, right?
Okay, actually, can I say
know what I'm gonna say?
I think that this is tied into a larger piece around domination, submission.
Oh, maybe they like
dynamics.
it.
Yes,
maybe they like it. Maybe
I've been paying attention to this because I will often come in to speak to philanthropy, right?
Oh my God.
And I come in like, y'all need to figure your shit out. This is fucked up. We need to change philanthropy. You need to be following us. Da 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 da. And I lay down the law, and I'm like, I'm not a very tough person. You might have picked up on it, but like all the toughness I have, I muster up for these engagements, and they're like, we love you so much. Oh my God, that was so great. Like, you're so smart. And like, can I call you and like, can you spank me some more? Like, I love it, right? I'm just like, okay, but are you gonna change how you distribute money? No, I need to do my job better, right?
It's
Clench
wild.
fist. Yeah.
Clench fist. And I don't know if I'll ever get invited to another Obama Foundation anything.
I bet you will. I bet you will tomorrow.
It shocks me
Obama.
because there's a narrative about Obama, and like it's still like I'm not gonna lie. Like if Michelle Obama walked in here right now, I might be like,
I would literally be on the floor.
I'm becoming. I want to become.
I want to become.
I'm just like,
I want to become. I was like looking like just in case that was like
I might pass out a little bit.
Yes.
But. And it's also,
I would try to kiss her boots.
You know what I'm saying? I feel like Oprah. Oprah is my problematic fave. I would literally pass out if Oprah Winfrey walked in this room right now.
Okay, can I tell you something beautiful? I know you said that we could go off track, so here we are. So speaking of Oprah, because I know we are in her town, right? So there's this thing that's afoot called radical black Marxist cannibalism, and what it's talking about, I'm bringing it in. So the idea, there's this joke like eat the rich, right?
Yes.
And so people are like, okay, at what point are we gonna have to eat the rich? And it's just like, a little dinner table fun, So, but the other day sometime recently, we're having this conversation and we're sitting there, and then someone, you could feel it coming. They were like, and I was like, are they gonna try to say Beyonce? Where are they coming? Because I was like, if you say Beyonce, we're not talking about that. Okay. That's not happening, right? I will throw myself in. But Oprah was the one. Someone said Oprah, and I was like, I would protect her with my own physical body. Yeah. Do you understand who Oprah is to all of us? Okay. She's too important. And I didn't know I felt that way until they tried to eat her. And then I was like,
oh no,
those juicy thighs, she worked hard to have those. Okay. You're not taking those from her. Not Oprah. And I just want you all to know too, like if it was between you and me and Oprah, Oprah would survive.
You got that right.
I do want to ask before, because I just in the sake of
we love
time,
her. I'm so glad we love her.
I do want to ask about a local thing, super local.
Oh yeah, local. I don't know anything about that.
Super Chicago.
Yeah.
Like elections and things like that. And I know that, and it's also national, I will say too, right? Like there was a Time cover of Mayor Pete and his partner, I think that got published this week or whatever. And there were so many people like sharing it and saying, oh my God, I'm crying in this very moment. And I really, obviously I did not see myself reflected in that. I don't see myself reflected in that. I don't see it as an advancement of where we are today. I don't think that, this is a major win for my community, for our community. But I did want to just kind of highlight, because we do have a black lesbian mayor here in Chicago now that's been elected. Yeah. And I know that BYP 100 specifically in 2016, even way before, right, this person chose to run, there was a relationship or some type of well, not relationship.
Did y'all go together?
Did y'all go together?
No, you're right.
But
you're right. Go ahead.
There was a campaign against Laurie Lightfoot, and so I'm curious to know if you could just share what that was, just as a reminder for people who maybe aren't familiar.
For sure.
In thinking about like the complexity of our stories.
For sure. So I always joke, I'm like, I'm oftentimes in rooms with people who I've turned up on, like in the past. And so in between 2015 2016, BYP 100, our Chicago chapter, was involved in a campaign calling for the firing of Dante Servin, Chicago police officer who shot and killed Rekia Boyd. who was a young black woman. And this campaign was really, this was after all the charges were dismissed. I sat in the courtroom, like during the trial as well, next to Rakia's mom when everything was happening. And so the charges were dismissed. The judge found that he should have received a higher charge, is what he said, so they just dismissed it. And so we, along with a number of other organizations, waged a campaign calling for his firing. So in August, I think it was August of 2015, I think it was. I can have the years mixed up. But it was August. It was the police review board hearing meeting that happened. They happen every month, I think the third Thursday of the month. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it was. Because the first one was May 21st when we had the first action. So we get to August. Laurie Lightfoot is the president or the chair of the board? She's president of the board. And I remember Martinez Sutton going up to the mic, and he was talking, and he's emotional. Martinez Sutton is Rakia Boyd's brother, and he's crying, he's emotional, as anybody would be, and she tries to silence him, and it's deeply disrespectful. Deeply, and this is month after month after month, Laurie Lightfoot is deeply disrespectful to Martinez and other family members who have had their loved ones shot and killed or harassed, sexually abused or violated by the Chicago Police Department. I witnessed it with my own 2 eyes. And in that August meeting is the one we shut down and deemed that board illegitimate. And the campaign was actually able to complete 2 of the 3 steps that we needed to get Dante Servin fired. And at the third step, he bowed out and resigned. And I can't remember what Laurie did at that point. But what I remember most and what was most visceral for me was how she spoke to people. It's how she spoke to people and how she treated people. And Zora Neale Hurston is known for saying, all my skin folk are not my kinfolk. That applies to the LGBTQ community through and through. Just because you have an identity, a marginalized identity, does not mean you have radical politics. You could be black and lesbian, black and trans, black and disabled, black and undocumented, black and migrant, black and immigrant, black and gender nonconformant, and still have very conservative politics. Or
black
politics,
and ignorant.
Black
yes.
and, right? Politics. And what I mean by conservative, I mean that shuts out access to liberation for other people. That's what I mean. You can have those politics. And so what I'm committed to under a Laurie Lightfoot administration is continuing to hold the fire to her feet. Holding the fire to her feet. And her feet to the fire. All of it. All of it.
She needs to have hot feet.
Because it would be a major misstep for us to think just because we have this person in office who shares an identity with many of us. And I knew queer folks in Chicago who were like, well, she's a lesbian, so I'm voting for her. I know now that I know your identity, I need to know your politics. And identity politics that is devoid of radical values, one that open up possibility for liberation, is an identity politics that actually sets us back. That's right. And so we need something different that's nothing short of revolutionary or transformative. So I ain't with the shits with Laurie. And just like letting her slide and anybody slide. And I'm not gonna treat her any different. We turned up on Rahm Emanuel almost every day. And so don't be surprised when we turn up on Laurie Lightfoot. She is not being treated differently. Yes. I ain't being homophobic in it. And I'm not being racist or sexist or misogynist in it. What I'm doing in that work and our people, we're being principled. That's right. What we're doing.
You're being principled.
So, yeah.
I just want to name 2 things in here. One is I live in Detroit, and so I'm really grateful that the understanding, that comprehension that just because it's black people in office or some identity in office doesn't mean you're going to get different results. Like, we know that deeply. And the other thing I want to say is, you call it that turning up. I think of it as a tough invitation, right? I think of what you're offering people as a tough invitation. You're just like, I want to let you know it's not right. How you're showing up right now, that's not gonna do it. That's not enough. And I believe you can do better, because that's why I see you as being very intelligent with your time and with the time of the projects that you engage in. So I'm like, I see you make the decision that you're like, if we don't think that we can actually move this, we're not gonna spend our time there. If I don't think that you can ever answer the invitation, I'm not making it, right? I'm not gonna invest time in any of it with you. But with someone like this, Laurie, I'm like, it feels like you're saying, you could do better. Yeah. You have all the same kind of ancestral situations that I do. I know you can do better. And so that tough invitation, and I hope she hears that tough invitation. I hope she takes the opportunity to transform in this moment.
Yes. One of the, this work, and I think that the 5 mandates, right? The 5 questions, sorry. Yeah. Well, they could be mandates too. Let's mandate that.
Let's mandate these questions that everyone has to answer in their work. Will y'all do it? You been mandated? Are you down? They're like, I don't know. I don't know about mandates. First. Yeah.
Mary Hooks wrote the mandate.
I believe in the mandate. I believe in Mary Hooks.
Me too.
But I'm thinking about like how a lot of organizing work is visionary, and you've expressed that a lot in this text, that a lot of this is reimagining the world that we live in now, and thinking of, if you take the time to imagine that world, also to think about where we sit in that world, right? What's our relationship to that future world that we're imagining? And I'm just thinking about how you're envisioning the world right now, moving forward.
So much of that has been opened up for me through Adrienne's work, through your work. I remember reading Octavia's Brood. I was like taking notes. If I was reading somebody, like Bell Hooks or somebody, I don't know, a Kathy Cohen.
Don't say
because
that.
I don't know if it's a direct quote from you, or you quote somebody else when you say like organizing is science fiction. Is that you directly?
Yeah, well, Lita and I say that is our assertion, is that if you are trying to touch the future and shape the future, that's science fictional activity. Yeah. So all organizing is actually science fiction.
I get that from you. And like we make really what could be perceived as other people as like wild demands about possibility of living in a world without prisons or police or jails, right? Or dealing with conflict without punishment. Like to me, that is absolutely the doing of science fiction. And because it doesn't exist full scale, it exists in pockets of the world for sure, but it doesn't exist full scale. So at the end of the day, like I just want us to be able to live within our full dignity as human beings and be in right relationship with each other and the land that we live on. And I learned a lot of that from Movement Generation. I stand for Movement Generation.
I stand for Movement Generation.
I love them so much. Y'all should look up their work.
Yes. Go to their trainings.
I mean, like, how some people quote, I don't know, like Mao or some, like people quote Gopal Dayanemi like that.
I know, I'm like, Gopal.
Just like Gopal said, Gopal said, and Gopal said, and Gopal said.
He's so
and so
brilliant.
I'm dreaming, that's what I'm dreaming of, a world where we can do that, where folks can move around in the world in their full dignity, where labor is shared, because somebody has to clean out the shit. Somebody has to farm the food. Somebody has to take care of the children. Somebody has to do all of these things. Somebody has, like, our pleasure workers. All these things, the work has to be done. So I want to see it in a world where it's actually, like, it's shared work and valued work, no matter what the work is. I think that's, like, the small piece of it. But it could be...
It's huge.
Expanded much bigger. But we use a lot of fancy words in organizing work or in movement work, but every industry does that. Every group of people does that.
Find their language, right?
Everybody has their own language, so.
I love that. I love so much of what you articulated. Well, I mean, I love what you just articulated, because really my dream is to just be a professional auntie. Like, I would just love to travel from place to place being like, hey, little nibbling babies, like, and just hold them and help them come into the world and play with them. Like, that's my happy place. So one of my visions is, if I get to experience this in my lifetime, I'm trying to do it as much as I can, but like to know, to trust, to have enough faith in us as a species and in our priorities that I could actually rest down my own system, rest down my own terror, and just be with children without the shadow that's there now. Because often now I find myself like being in love with children and playing with children while also being like, God, I just want to make this as good as possible for you right now, because it's not good, right? Like, it's not good right now, and I just want everything that you can experience to be as good and abundant, as beautiful as possible, to fill you up, so that you are able to get through the rest of this life. Once you realize what we've been doing to this planet and what we've been doing to each other, and my vision, I always, I'm always like, oh, what's my vision? Because I do science fiction stuff, people are always like, you have one, right? And I'm like, yes, but it's not a place, but it's a sensation. It's a sensation that I've touched into in my life, and I cultivate of really a radical freedom, a radical sense of freedom in myself that I'm like, I am not beholden to any of these systems of oppression. I do not have to participate in any of these systems of oppression. I do not have to pay taxes that go off and kill anybody else. I am liberated from those systems, and I get to spend my life loving and just cultivating pleasure. Like, I want that to be a future, that's how we spend our time, is being like, let's have big ideas and cultivate pleasure. That's the main thing that we're doing, and take care of the babies while we're doing that other stuff. But I think that heaven looks like different things to so many people. And my main thing is, let's give up the myth that heaven is some other place. Right. I want to bring it here right now. That's my vision.
Yes, I mean, hello. I think I wanted to ask you what's next.
Heaven, obviously.
Heaven.
Emmanuel.
No, but I did want to ask you what's next. I know that you have a sabbatical coming up, Adrienne.
It's true.
Yes.
I'm going away
6
from everybody.
months. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a big sabbatical fan. I'm an evangelist for sabbaticals.
And so I want to hear a little bit about that, but I know that you took some time to write this book and kind of were on your own journey, similar to like a sabbatical a little bit, to write the book. And in this new phase, what's next in your work, Charlene?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Adrienne just mentioned, I wrote this book while I was working, pretty much. Like I didn't really have real time off. It was play time. Even when I called myself taking time off, I didn't have it. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, this was all through 2017. Yeah, 2017, 2018. Yeah, 2018 I was burnt out. 2017, 2018, maybe the past 5 years, who knows? Or 20. I'm laughing now, but it was not funny then. And so I formally, shout out to one of our new co-directors of BYP 100, Janae Bonsu is in the building. So I transitioned out of my role as director at BYP 100 formally in December. But I'm sure the staff could tell you and other folks could tell you I was mentally gone and I don't know, for real, definitely by August of 2018. And I was posing, that's a whole nother story. Anyway, so by December, between December and now, literally today, y'all, I'm probably telling too much, Janae asked me, am I okay now with us talking about, us having conversation about BYP 100 and me supporting her in the way that she would like me to support her, in this moment. And I said, I think I'm ready now. Yeah, I can do it now. And it literally has it's been 4 months since I've done anything BYP 100 related, and it's gonna take me even longer. And it's not because of the organization itself, it's because of this moment that we've been in a movement for the past 6 years, actually before BYP 100, because I've been doing this work now for 15 years, and being in the fire, and so many of us, the past 5 years alone have been 10 years at least for so many people, even if they just joined movement, in 2013. It is exponentially, I don't know what all the words are.
It's like dog years, but organizer years.
It's like organizing dog years. That's what it's been like. And so for me, what I've been focusing on is writing. I've still been working. Yes. I facilitate a lot of retreats and following in Adrienne's footsteps. Yay. I'm doing that. I love facilitation. I love movement education. I'm starting a new organization called the Chicago Center for Leadership and Transformation right here. Launching it for real in June. There's going to be some events in June. Yes. And it's focused on building strong leaders. Yes. Building strong leaders and doing it, meeting a need that we have, that this organization won't meet all the needs for all the leadership development we need in our movement, but it will be here, y'all, locally rooted, nationally, and globally connected. And I'm excited to have y'all all a part of it. Yes. That's what I'm up to. I'm writing another book.
Yes.
Write another book. Are you going to tell us what it's about, or you can hold it?
I can say it's a socialism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Socialism. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, I'm like, why you act like you're not I was like, when you ask people that question, I was like, do you want health care?
Right.
Education?
Right.
You want housing for everyone?
Right.
You want a living wage? You want so you're a socialist? No.
No. And the funny thing is, I don't even call myself a socialist. Mm-hmm. Wow, the book is all about that. So I think I'm farther left than that.
Maybe
but anyway,
you will. We'll see.
And I also like having a baby. I want to have a baby. So that's it. That's what I'm trying to be up to. What you up to, Adrienne?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Look, there's no moment. I ain't had no moment there. You just go straight to you.
I'm just like, I'm going to be visiting you and holding your baby. That's what's next for me. Let's see. I'm so pleased. I am pleased. So what's happening next in my life is I started this Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute. And yes, last year we did experiments, these experimental sessions called Immersions, where I'm trying to learn how do we play with and learn emergent strategy in ways that are not bottlenecked through my presence. So we did 3 massive gatherings, and then I also did a facilitation training that some folks came to. We're about to do the next one next week or the week after in New Orleans. So this year I've got 7 of those immersions happening, and 6 of them are outside of Detroit. So the idea is like they, incubated in Detroit, and now we're going to take the model and see how it works in all these different cities. And there's local host committees for each of those cities that are shaping who needs to be in the room and how's it going to go and all that. And those committees are made up of clusters of people who came through the first immersion. So they know, like, this is what it can be, and then how do we make that work? So there's going to be the Twin Cities, Durham, New Orleans, DC, the Bay Area, New York, and Detroit. And so that I'm really excited about. And then I think, and then I'm writing a book also that is, when I set out to write Emergent Strategy, I thought I was writing a facilitation book, and then it just became a different kind of book. But now I want to write an actual book that's, and I just got approval from AK Press to do it the way I want to do. So it's going to be a double entry book. So if you enter from the front, it's a facilitation book. But if you turn around, you enter from the back, it's a book on mediation. Because I'm like, those are the 2 things that I feel like we need to like movement upgrade. And luckily, those are 2 things that I love doing. And so again, I've got some wisdom to offer on how to do those, best practices, but also some big questions that you can just be asking yourself as you enter into that. And the mediation piece feels really important as a part of the trajectory of moving more people towards a transformative justice capacity. Because I feel like there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I don't want to be punitive. I want to go beyond restorative. I believe that transformative is possible, but how do I practice it? And a lot of times people get into one bad, they have one try, and then they're like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, like when babies are learning to walk, they don't just like stand up and like fall down and like, fuck it, crawling for the rest of my life, right? So I feel like we're like that, right? We're like in a very early phase of learning how to do it. But I do think that skilled mediation would keep us from having to have these really big drawn out processes if we could catch stuff earlier. And so I call it kitchen table mediation. And I'm like, you come sit at the kitchen table, remind ourselves that we are committed to something larger than just us, and that our movements are committed to something larger and should be paying attention to something larger than us, and how do we bring our whole selves in. So I'm writing that, I'm really excited about it, and then I'm literally, my plan is to push send on that, and then go on my sabbatical.
Yes. I want to thank you for both. We're going to give an opportunity for everyone to ask questions, but I just wanted to personally thank you. Just 10 minutes. But I did want to thank you so much just for your time today and for the wisdom that you share in all of these books. And so many people are going to get so much out of it. I just know it. So
thank you. And thanks for, you've been great with us. I feel like we're just like, and you're like, good.
I'm here. I'm sedated. No, I'm just kidding.
I would not judge if you were. I was like, let's get high. Let's do it.
So I don't know who's asking. So I just also realized that I'm like at the edge of the seat.
I know you like kept moving over.
I'm like.
I was like, are you scared, baby?
No, I'm not scared.
Come back over here, baby.
I'm not scared.
Well, let me see
sat
it.
Down.
Move back
That's
over
where
here.
I landed the whole time.
But you still won't come over.
Just for the record,
come closer.
Just for the record, I'm not scared.
The body says a million words.
But yeah, right.
Thank you so much. So we're about to open it up to questions. We have 2 mics circulating. Before that, I would just like to announce that you're all welcome to join us for our reception following. And if you'd like to have a book signed, we just ask that we'll be lining up at the right of the auditorium. We ask that you just remain seated while the house clears, and then we'll let you know when you can go line up. So we have 2 mics. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and in the interest of having as many questions asked as possible, please no comments.
So learn how to ask a question.
So we
training.
We have one house left. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you both. Thank you both for being here at Columbia College and in Chicago. I have a question that I often get asked about because of the research that I do with popular culture. I work here at Columbia in dance, and I'm the co-director of academic diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of the, because I have a chapter on Beyonce and on Rihanna, and I'm talking about black feminism and black power and all.
We go together.
And one of the questions I often get asked, because, and I'm asking this because you all started talking about Beyonce and you've also talked about Oprah, is how do we reconcile the relationship to capitalism at the same time that I'm acknowledging the work, the labor that these women are doing in popular culture, and I'm saying pop culture has an effect on the ground, regardless of the extent to which folks might want to disregard that work, but that it moves people, and it participates in movement. So I'm just curious, because I'm all for going around having to answer this question, so yes.
I have a quick answer because I get asked this a lot because people are like, aren't you a walking contradiction, Adrienne? And I'm like, yes. And my answer is this. I hold a staunch critique of capitalism. I don't believe it's a functional system, and I don't think we can ever get free inside of capitalism, and I think we need to work to tear it down. I'm never going to get mad at a black woman for succeeding inside of the existing system that we have. So I'm not mad at Beyonce, I'm not mad at Oprah, just like I'm not mad at any, I'm just like, if you succeed, like, I'm an artist, I'm a facilitator, I'm all these things. I'm like, I was never meant to have any money, right? But if I happen to have some, if some comes to me, it's not like, oh, well, let me punish myself or let me like get back into I don't even know what you call a gross clothing option, but you know what I'm saying? Like, let me just like, potato sack. I was like, what do you call that thing? I'm like, I'm not gonna flog myself because this system exists. I'm gonna get mine and then be responsible with it. And I feel like, particularly Beyonce and Oprah, what you see is when a black woman succeeds, they turn around so fast that they get whiplash to redistribute those funds, right? And so both of them have given away much more than they've kept, and much more than anyone else at their level is giving away at percentage-wise of their resources. So I'm like, they're doing what they can inside these systems, but to me, the system is still a broken thing, and there's a lot of ways to tear it down.
We have a question, house left.
House left.
Thank you, everyone. So I have a question about Harriet Tubman's orgasms.
Me too. Let's talk about it.
So, I mean, all of y'all, a lot of people in movement work talk about ancestors, and I know that you do tarot reading. And so, but I also think that maybe this language around spirituality is somewhat co-opted in movement work, because there is, like deep traditions of spirituality and shamanism, and, people who do this. So just like asking what is, and I mean, of course, movement work is very spiritual in science fiction. And so what is the relationship of spirituality with the work you do?
So I'm going to give another shout out to Juju Bay, who's in here.
And I was like, speaking of spirituality.
Yeah. So basically, everyone should listen to, is it a Little Juju?
A Little Juju podcast. Look at your face.
Yeah,
take it,
she's
girl.
right here, a Little Juju podcast, who really looks into she talks a lot about that, a lot about spirituality, specifically, like as a black person, our religious traditions, all that stuff is explored. And so please listen to that. And we used to work together, so
yes.
Thank you so much for doing that. That's movement work. I consider that to be movement work, what
Absolutely.
You do. And so I think just like bridging to the conversation about capitalism, under capitalism, exploitation and co-optation is constant, right? And I think a lot of the things that we see when it comes to co-optation of, however you understand that, with spirituality and movement work, is driven by capitalism, is driven by anti-blackness, when non-black people try to claim black religious traditions and say that they can embody them as well as we can and profit from it. We see it, we see it in so many spaces. We see it when people like Jamal Bryant have a bailout in Atlanta and have no recognition of the national bailout campaign that is largely led by black women and black feminists, right? And they didn't even reach out, and they raised $100,000. Didn't even reach out to the folks who've been doing this work for quite some time. So we see it happening in many ways. To me, movement work personally is deeply spiritual work. It is spiritual work. I remember, I think I talk about it in here, Well, we were in Charlotte. I was there with you, Asha. Asha saved my life in Charlotte, North Carolina, during the Charlotte Uprising. And we were walking past the jail into the police department in downtown Charlotte. And I swear to you, I had nothing short of an outer body experience. It was a complete outer body experience. And like in the middle of this crowd chanting, who keeps us safe? We keep us safe. And to me, it was like what many people talk about in Black religious tradition here in the U.S., not even just in the U.S., around the world, of being possessed and being overcome. And to me, it was like that spirit of the people who I was around, the folks who were in cages in that jail, the folks who I was in the action with, I was just overcome. And just with anything else, you know, we have to filter. There's contradictions in everything that we do. And I don't really, to me, it's not important what religious tradition you like align yourself with, but it's about connection to something that is within me, connection with myself, and connection with other people, and the world, and the land, and the things that we can't see around us. That's how I think about the role of spirituality and movement.
I'll say just one more brief word on it, which is I think for people who have been displaced, intentionally cut away from our root system, sometimes feeling our way in is the only way back down and to connect. And so there's a lot of that in my life. When I think of like the tarot practice, part of the reason I'm drawn to it is because there's so many different cultures and practices and ways that have adopted it and practiced it and honed it over time. So it feels like a safe way for me as someone who I don't even know 2 generations back on one side of my family, that I can find a way back to spirit and back to that which is higher than myself. And those moments you spoke about being possessed, if I wasn't a channel or a conduit, I don't think I'd have anything to say. Like everything that comes through me, and why I barely think before I speak anymore is because I'm just like, it's not in here that I'm speaking from. It's not even here that I'm speaking from, but it's like there's something much larger than us that wants to use us well. And if we surrender to it, we can be used well. And there's a lot of practices that help you to hone and focus. Like, how are you gonna use me? Use me.
That's right. All right, we have one more in the center. Oh, hey. Oh, good. Hey, nice.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
It's you.
It's me. Hi. Thank you. I'm so full of, oh my God. So you were, Adrienne, you were talking about when folks get invited for like mediation.
Yes.
And I'm curious to both of you, what do you think is the fear that people have for mediation, for conflict resolution? What do you think is the thing that holds organizers, people back from not continuing to crawl, but deciding to walk?
Ooh.
You got it?
Yeah, sure, I can start. I've been listening, I keep saying this, I've been listening to this white woman, Brene Brown.
I love Brene Brown so much. She's another one who y'all can't eat, Brene.
I've been listening to her.
She's safe. I love
you
Brene.
Know what I'm saying?
She taught me how to feel vulnerable.
And this is what I'm about to say. I think, toast to Brene. Absolutely. So Brene talks about the power of vulnerability and even more importantly, what keeps us from being vulnerable. And it's the real experiences of shame, the real experiences of not feeling worthy. And I think so much of what shows up in movement has very little to do with what actually happened in that meeting, what happened in that action, what happened in the office, what happened during this program, this event, whatever that is. It is about all the things that we carry with us and how they're connected to things, and everything that tells us that showing up as our full selves is not safe. And that is real. It is really real. Like, I'm not gonna act like it's not, like we could just be out here. And sharing all of your life history and all your trauma is not necessarily being vulnerable. It is not.
Talk about it.
But making that choice, being in the choice of doing something that you wouldn't normally do because you've been ashamed to do it, or ashamed to say it, or it's out of this feeling of not feeling worthy. It's something like, we're human beings, and I think that's what shows up in how we are hesitant to mediation, because it's based in real life experiences. And again, we're not outside, like movement people. I can't stand it when we talk about the community. Who are you talking about? I'm in the community.
Yeah, can you drive
We're
there?
part of many communities. many communities, and we have different lived experiences and different levels of pain that we experience from different systems of oppression.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'm not outside of this community that we're talking about. And so we have to see people in movement as like real people. We have to see ourselves as real people, even when we're like valorized as superheroes. And I love a superhero all day, every day. I love it. I'm like, Avengers, I sat in that theater for 3 hours and watched it. I loved it.
I was like, how many endings do we need?
Okay, all of them.
20.
And so we gotta see allow other people to be human beings, and also like not expect our leaders to not be human.
That's good.
And our mediators to not be human.
That's good.
And just, so much of what shows up has little to do with what actually happened. And being willing to take a move back and to actually recognize those things.
I 1,000 jillion% agree. And then the only thing I would add to that is we also don't know how to fight, right? We don't know how to have principled struggle, how to fight with each other with principles intact and with our dignity intact and with the other person's dignity intact. And so when it comes time for conflict, and that's learned behavior. Like our parents didn't necessarily know how to fight, their parents didn't know how to fight. And then we've been for oppressed people, we've been in situations where we are literally, whatever we knew about fighting has been broken out of us. So we're trying to reassemble some kind of warriorship inside of ourselves that is principled. And I think that then becomes a mess because people are like, now I'm gonna fight. And it's like, no, this isn't the right place. And it's like, or now I want to fight, and it's just like you're just insulting me. That's actually not. We're not even. What is the content, right? And so just trying to get to like, let's talk about what is the actual content. Is this the actual container for that content? Can you be responsible for your own feelings and your own behaviors? Can you actually show up and acknowledge that you might be wrong? Like that's my favorite thing. Is I'm like in a fight. That's what we're dealing with. Is like, you're saying you're right. I'm saying I'm right. Is one of us right now? I mean, like, it's just like, right? Like, what's happening? And I'm just like, for me, that's been a lifelong thing of learning how to fight in real time. I would do anything. And this is part of why I think I'm obsessed with mediation, because I would do so many things to avoid the fight, right? I would be like, I'm going to write you a really long email. I have bullet points about what has happened. And even in that, I would never say, and here's what you did that hurt me, right? I might be like, sometimes people think that they can come around my face with like, and I'm like, is there a thing in there? I'm like, you hurt my feelings when you said this. Right. It insulted me that you didn't acknowledge my win right now, whatever it is, and then be able to wrestle with it. And then also that fighting takes more time than we give it. So usually when someone tells you something about yourself that you haven't seen yet, then you have to go back and like look in a mirror in private, right? You know what I mean? So you have to be like, oh, hold up just a second. Am I an asshole? And then come back around, right? And just be like, sorry. Turns out 30% asshole, didn't know. Yep. But I'm here right now to take accountability. I want to grow, I want to change. So that part, it's just like we have to learn how to fight and how to be wrong. And one of the things I talk about in, I think, emergent strategy is like the faster, if I was to say like, what's one skill set that'll make you a better human? It's speed up the capacity with which you can acknowledge you're wrong. That's right. Right? Because the faster you can be like, I might be wrong, right? The faster you can get there, even consider that it's a possibility, the easier it'll be for you to move through like, yeah, you might be right. That's the other part of it. Your wrong ass might be right, And then you're in motion to the ocean.
All right, we have time for just one more question.
Just one more.
And so I'll get you. And again, if
just one more question.
If you're interested in having your, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I just was gonna make a pop song, but it's cool. Let's just keep moving.
If you're interested in having your book signed, just hang tight at the end of all this, and we'll dismiss you in about 5 minutes to line up. Thank you so much.
Are you asking a question right now? Oh shit.
Oh, this is about to be deep.
It's about to be a real question, y'all.
Not really. I never get picked in the question section.
So your life story just changed. Your narrative just changed right now.
Okay. So both of you talked about this idea of this edge of what's politically possible. Yeah. And so, I'm curious to hear from each of you about something, whether it's a campaign that you're seeing in your science fiction vision, or just an effort, a liberation, opportunity for some liberation at that edge of what's politically possible right now that excites you.
They should pick you more often in these question moments, because that is good.
Wow.
You have one?
I mean, there are a couple.
I'm like, a couple.
I have I should maybe write a short story about this. I've been thinking about it. But
Please.
like, what if we lived in a world where we all took shifts in work, in different work, just different shifts, right? Where we had, like, maybe this is your year where you're working on the farm, and next year you get to write. This year you have to clean out the compost toilets, or you got to clean out the compost toilets for 3 months. And then the next 3 months.
A year of compost toilets.
I know.
A little extreme.
We can switch that around. We can switch that around.
That's why people don't be socialists.
You know, right? So maybe not a year of cleaning out the compost toilets.
3 months, though.
Maybe 3 months of it. But really, because I think about when I hear, when I hear some activists talk about, like, a world without work. Well, I just don't have to work. Like, what do you mean? Who's going to make the food that you're eating?
Exactly.
And so I think about, like, this idea we don't just get to do what we want all the time. And that we do what also needs to be done. And, like, how do we build that in, even, like, on a practical level, in our, more practical, perhaps, in our organizations? Maybe you only organize for 2 years, and then you take a break and you do something else. Then you come back.
Yes.
You leave, you come back.
Preach.
You leave, you come back. It's not expected for you to do the thing for the whole time. So and it's not always a sabbatical, but literally you're going to do something else. Maybe you're going to work at a coffee shop, but you can also still, like, support yourself.
Right.
You know?
Or even if it was like you're in a leadership, you're like leading a campaign or something, and then you get to shift out and go just be a participant
like
that
a
shows
national
up to them.
campaign that you may be leading. Maybe you don't have to lead it forever. Asha.
Maybe it's getting personal coaching.
All right. So that's what I think about. That's like what's on the, like, it may sound like wow right now, but maybe you don't get to just spend 10 years doing the thing you're passionate about. But you spend time within those 10 years doing something else.
I'm sitting here like,
that doesn't include wars. That doesn't include being a prison guard. That doesn't include those things. But
yeah, armed guards, none of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yours is awesome, obviously. So now I'm like, what can I add? I'll say one thing, and I want to risk saying this here because it's totally an unpopular vision that I hold. Okay, it has to do with animal liberation. And I say this as someone who, I love bacon, and I have a lot of friends who like having dogs and cats, and I think that we shouldn't have pets, and I don't think we should be eating animals. That's how I feel. Oh my God. So, and I sense the low clapping, okay? I don't care about how much you love your captivated animal. My belief system really has been getting more and more this way. There's very few people who are in a right relationship with their pets, right? The majority of human beings who have a pet have some creature that has to be alone inside their home for hours of their lives while that person gets to go and be everywhere and do everything. And then they come home and spend 5 minutes or 10 seconds or, maybe even an hour cuddling their cute pet. And then they post a picture on the internet about their cute dog who was suffering in loneliness all day. Maybe it was a luxurious loneliness, but that animal doesn't even get to know the wilderness that is actually possible. It's supposed to be a fucking wild animal, and that's why it's killing your mice or whatever it is. And also, the other thing, so that's an easier one for me to do because I'm allergic to a lot of them. So I'm just like, y'all, the fact that people are just bringing dogs on a plane, like it's no big deal, and I just have to deal with that. Like, that wild animal's not supposed to be in the air. It's a dog. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, so that's one belief. And then the other belief is actually like that I haven't been able to make the move towards, and I feel a way about it. But I actually think, like, when I look at environmental justice and I look at our practices and what we mostly could practice that would make a huge shift. Like if everyone who identifies being a part of a movement for environmental justice and social justice just was like, okay, I'm gonna not eat meat anymore, right? I actually think we would be in a wildly different place environmentally pretty quickly in most of our places. But I'm not ready for it myself. So I'm like that, I'm like, I wanna get there. And I often, like, I'll post pictures of like the kale that I cooked in bacon fat, and someone will say, have you considered vegetarian? And I'm like, I haven't. Like, why are you coming for me so hard right now? I know I'm wrong, but I know I'm wrong, right? And so that, to me, the edge, it's not even like those two pieces, but it's also something where you're like, I know I'm wrong. I know I'm out of alignment with like what I believe. Like, when will I get there? I'm 40. Am I gonna get there? Am I just gonna always be wrong? Anyway, so, and if you love your pet, like, good. Yeah. I was brave, just like Brene told us to be.
Yes. Yes, right.
What is this saying now? Is that what time it is?
So please join me in
Okay.
I think so.
Cool.
thanking.
Sorry. Oh, hi. I was like, where are you? Voice from God?
And
Voice
Charlene.
from God.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
Thank
y'all.
you. Thank you. We did it.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Thanks, Chicago
Thank
Humanities
you.
Festival. Thanks, everybody.
Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on.